My parents' beloved daughter, my sister, couldn't get into her dream college, but I did. They spread a horrible rumor to frame me, which got me expelled from college. I went from being homeless to building a six-figure business, and now my parents want to apologize. 7 years back, I was expelled from college 3 months after I started because of a false and horrible rumor that my parents started about me. The only reason they did so was because my sister wanted to get into the same college but couldn't, which shouldn't have come as a shock because her grades were nowhere near as good as mine. But for some reason, she and my parents were still devastated when they found out she hadn't been accepted into her dream college, but I had. To my parents, she had always been the golden child, so I was not surprised when they refused to cover my tuition and told me to make my own arrangements. Obviously, they were trying very hard to make sure that I wouldn't be able to go to the college of my choice just because my sister couldn't. But I wasn't ready to give up, so I spoke to my grandparents and convinced them to co-sign my student loan, and that's how I ended up, against all odds, exactly where I wanted to be. By then, I had already moved out of my parents' house because I was clearly no longer welcome there. I don't think I ever had been in the first place, but by then, the environment had become so hostile that I could tell they were willing to kick me out, and so before they could do it, I left on my own. But unfortunately, somehow my sister found out that I had ended up in that college anyway, and she complained to our parents. So she, along with a couple of her friends and our parents, started spreading rumors that I was dealing in college. They take stuff like that very seriously. As soon as the rumors started picking up speed, the authorities found out about it, and I ended up being reported. There were a lot of investigations carried out by the cops and the authorities, and somehow they were able to find a stash of marijuana in my dorm room. I'm guessing my parents bribed their way into it, and it wouldn't have been difficult for somebody to sneak into the room and place it there without getting caught since my roommate and I had a lot of friends who kept coming in and out of the room. Besides, there were already a lot of rumors doing the rounds about me selling drugs on campus, and a couple of people even said that I had offered it to them, probably either because my family had bribed them or maybe just because they wanted to be a part of the drama. Either way, the situation seemed impossible, and even though I knew I was innocent, and so did my roommate, the authorities did not look kindly upon me. It would be impossible to pinpoint anybody to blame for all that, especially when the truth was so complicated. So even though I begged and pleaded, it made no difference and I was expelled. If you think that was the worst of it, there's a lot more to come. After I got kicked out of college, I literally had nowhere else to go. My parents had told my grandparents about what had been going on with me, and they wanted nothing to do with me because they believed that there was no smoke without fire. Besides, the evidence seemed irrefutable at that point, and I don't exactly blame them for not believing me when I told them that I was innocent and had nothing to do with drugs because of the stash in my room. Anyway, I didn't have any money because whatever I had saved from working part-time jobs in high school had all been spent already while I was trying to make arrangements for myself to be able to go to college. The student loan was ineffective because, well, I'd been expelled, but I still had to return whatever money had been spent on my education already. And I knew that I could not default on it because otherwise, my grandparents would have to pay for it. I was homeless and unemployed, and I only had a couple of months as a grace period before I had to start repaying the amount that had already been paid for my tuition. The only thing that I got slightly lucky about was that marijuana had been decriminalized in my state, so I didn't get into a lot of trouble with the law because that was the only drug that had actually been found in my possession, not narcotics or whatever. But back then, that was not really something that gave me any hope at all, so now I recognize what a huge blessing that was. Anyway, after I got kicked out, I had nobody to count on. But thankfully, my roommate was very nice to me, and her parents took me in for a couple of weeks. However, I did not want to be a burden on them, so I took up the first job that I could find and started working as a cashier in a grocery store. I lived as frugally as I could, started saving up money, and within a month, I had thanked my roommate and her parents and left so I could move into the cheapest apartment I could find. It was in a terrible neighborhood, and I had to share that place with 3 roommates, even though the apartment itself was small and cramped. I made the best of my situation. I started taking up more jobs, and even on the weekends, I wouldn't allow myself to rest because I knew that I had nobody else to count on. In all honesty, I don't know how I survived those years because it was all just a blur to me. All I did was work. All I thought about was work, and the only time I would ever feel happy was when I received the payments for my work. I won't bother with the more boring details of my life, but in the past, I have worked as a receptionist, waitress, bartender, saleswoman, and whatnot. It was hard work. None of it was easy, but somehow I got through it and managed to move out of that tiny apartment into a better one, which was still kind of small, but at least I didn't have to share it with anyone. Then finally, I bought my own house last year with my own money because a couple of years ago, I finally struck gold. About 4 years back, when I had been working as a receptionist at a real estate firm, the only thing I could think about all day was that I could do this too. So when a spot opened up, I applied and luckily I got the job. Since then, there has been no looking back because I knew that I had to make the most of my opportunity. I didn't have a college degree like most people there, but what I did have was experience with people, and I guess I was charming enough. Slowly but steadily, I started climbing the corporate ladder, and last year I was finally promoted to an upper management position. I think I've never been more proud of myself in my entire life. After my promotion was finalized, I decided to buy a house of my own. After selling people's houses for so many years, it felt incredible to finally own my own place. I don't mean to brag, but I literally went from rags to riches because I now make 6 figures annually, and I'm one of the best and most valued employees at my company. I thought about going back to college a couple of times just to finish my degree, but other than that, I'm really happy with my life and how it has turned out. Of course, I've had no contact with my family over the past couple of years, and neither have they tried to contact me. I'm fine with that. I don't really miss them, and I think I'm much better off without them. I do sometimes talk to my friends from high school, and of course, I'm still in touch with my roommate from college because we became good friends even though we had known each other for just 3 months. The only people I've never missed in the past 7 years are my parents and my sister because they tried to ruin my life, even though they didn't succeed. I haven't heard from them, nor have I heard about them because I've made it very clear to everyone I know that I don't want to hear about anything that they're going through, good or bad. People have been respectful of that. Unfortunately, I didn't find out that my sister had passed away last month until my parents visited me recently with that news just this week. When they showed up, I was obviously very surprised because I hadn't been in touch with them for the last 7 years. Naturally, I didn't know how they had even found out where I lived. Later on, they told me that they had begged my roommate and her parents to tell them, and eventually they did, but only because they kept bringing up the fact that they had already lost one daughter and didn't want to lose another. When they showed up, the first thing they did was hug me and tell me how proud they were of me. It felt odd and unnatural because even when I was younger, they never appreciated me for any of my achievements out of fear that it would make my sister jealous. But anyway, at the time, I had been really shocked by the news of my sister's passing, so I tried to be kind to them in spite of everything they had done to me in the past. We made some small talk, and they told me about the car accident that had taken my sister's life and cried about it for a bit while I consoled them. And before people start calling me a doormat, it had been 7 years since I had seen them last, so of course, I was also having a lot of mixed feelings about the situation. I never liked my sister, and I hadn't exactly forgiven them for what they had done to me either. But even then, I'm still a human being, and I just couldn't bring myself to slam the door on my grieving parents, especially when I was feeling so lost and confused. If that makes me a doormat like a lot of my friends have already said, then fine. Maybe I am. But anyway, after speaking to my parents for a while, they finally addressed the elephant in the room and told me that they were here to apologize for everything that had happened when I was in college. They said they shouldn't have done what they did at the time. They had just been too blinded by the fact that one of their daughters hadn't managed to get into the college she wanted. So when my sister accused me of being an addict and told them that I didn't deserve to go to college, they decided they were going to set the record straight for everyone. In the process, they ended up ruining my life. They claimed that until recently, when they spoke to my roommate, they had no idea that I actually had nothing to do with drugs and that my sister had been lying about the whole thing. According to them, she had apparently been feeding them lies about me ever since I had left home. Although they had been skeptical at first, she lied to them with such conviction that ultimately they had no choice but to believe that I was a drug addict who had plagiarized her essays to get into college. Of course, no such thing had happened. She had made it all up, and they were finally realizing it now after speaking to my roommate. So now they wanted to apologize to me and try to repair a non-existent relationship. But when they said that, I don't know why, but I just lost it at them. I started screaming, telling them that they had no business coming here to apologize to me 7 years after they had tried to ruin my life in the worst way possible. I told them that I didn't believe a word of their lies and that the fact that they were trying to throw their dead daughter under the bus just because she couldn't defend herself anymore was even more despicable. I told them that I thought they had known it all along and had, in fact, helped my sister get me kicked out somehow. So, I accused them outright and told them that I didn't want their apology because I knew they were only apologizing since they had lost one daughter, and now I was their only hope. I said they just wanted someone to take care of them when they were old, or let them play with grandkids. I told them I could see right through their act. They actually seemed shocked when I started yelling at them to get out. They insisted that they were telling the truth and were not trying to throw anybody under the bus. They said they genuinely had no clue my sister had been lying about me and denied having anything to do with bribery or planting evidence in my room, as I had accused them of doing. But I wasn't having any of it. I kept yelling at them until they left. Afterward, I called my roommate to speak to her because, as much as I value her, I was annoyed that she hadn't thought it was important to tell me she had met with my parents and given them my contact information. When I confronted her about it, she admitted it, but explained that my parents had seemed so desperate to contact me that she found it incredibly difficult to say no, especially when they kept bringing up how they had already lost one daughter. I could understand where she was coming from, but I still wasn't happy about the situation. I explained everything that had happened during the fight with my parents, and she told me something very surprising. Apparently, when she refused to tell my parents where I lived and accused them of ruining my life with their lies, they seemed genuinely unaware that I wasn't actually a dealer or addict. They had told her the same story they told me, that my sister had fed them lies about me, and they believed her. Initially, they refused to believe my roommate when she explained the truth. But the more she detailed the events, including the rumors, the accusations, and the planted evidence, the more my parents realized they had been deceived. My roommate said they seemed genuinely shocked, which surprised her because she had assumed they had been involved in everything. But based on their reactions, even she started to believe they might not have had anything to do with the events, and it might have been all my sister's doing. Because they seemed so surprised, my roommate eventually decided to give them my contact information, thinking they deserved to meet me and try to explain themselves. She apologized for not consulting me first, but thought I would refuse if she did. Honestly, she was probably right. I would have refused. Still, the meeting happened, and now I don't know what to think. I've realized they might have been telling the truth about not having anything to do with what happened in college, apart from believing my sister's lies. It's possible my sister orchestrated everything, and my parents were just gullible enough to believe her. Maybe they genuinely meant their apology, and I overreacted by yelling at them. I feel bad about the whole thing and have been considering reaching out to them. But the only reason I haven't done so is that a part of me feels like what I did was long overdue, and I shouldn't feel guilty for standing up for myself. After thinking about the situation for a long time, I've decided I'm not going to apologize to them. I don't even feel like I have to speak with them if I don't want to. I've spent 7 years of my life without them, and I think I can go the rest of my life without talking to them as well. A lot of my friends already think I was a total doormat for even letting them back into my life in the first place. They believe I shouldn't have even opened the door when they showed up. That's already done, though. Only my roommate has a different opinion. She thinks I did the right thing by letting them in and getting closure. Even if I don't want them back in my life, at least they know the truth about my sister, and I know they might not have been as involved in the events as I believed. Still, I don't think it changes much. My sister was conniving and planned everything very well. If she had put that much effort into improving her grades, she wouldn't have been rejected from college, and none of this would have happened. We shouldn't speak ill of the dead, but she pretty much brought this upon herself. I'm not saying it was all her fault. My parents were equally at fault for believing her lies without verifying anything. They were so convinced that their golden child could do no wrong that they gaslit themselves into going against the facts. For instance, I had always had better grades than her. Why would I need to plagiarize her essays? If they had any sense, they would have realized that. But it was wishful thinking on their part, and they convinced themselves I was into drugs even though I had never shown any signs of such behavior. Even if I can somehow excuse what happened in college, I can't forgive them for everything that happened before. They treated me poorly my entire life, and no matter what I did, it was never good enough. They are the reason I struggled so much after I was expelled. That's not something you can forget or forgive easily. So they can continue to feel bad about what happened, but I'm not obliged to make them feel better. My friends are right. I was a doormat for even bothering to let them in just because they had lost a daughter. In reality, the only thing they're upset about is losing the only daughter who mattered to them. Now they have to make do with the backup. It sounds harsh, but it's the truth. A week has passed since my last update and 2 weeks since my parents last visited me. I've been trying to move on from the situation and focus on my normal life. Today, they showed up at my house again, and I was caught off guard. When I came back home from work, they were sitting in their car in front of my house, waiting for me. When they saw me, they got out of the car and said they really needed to talk about everything that had happened and everything they had learned recently. They claimed that only by addressing the situation could all of us move on. But honestly, I wasn't interested in addressing anything. I was tired from work, and in my head, I had already addressed the situation by telling them the truth and learning their version of events. I told them I had nothing more to say to them and that it would be wise for them to leave. Otherwise, I'd call the cops. I had no patience left for them. In the past few days, the more I thought about them, the angrier I felt. They had 7 years to try to contact me, but they only did so after losing one daughter. It took them nearly 7 whole years to find out the truth about me and how wrongly they had treated me, and I wasn't ready to forgive that. The fact that they ruined my life over a bunch of lies is something I will never move on from. It's insulting that they thought a flimsy apology would fix everything. When they refused to leave, I called the cops right in front of them. That's when they started screaming about how unfair I was being. Once again, they tried to play the "we lost one daughter" card. They said they were trying not to lose the other. I actually laughed at that statement and told them they never had 2 daughters to lose. They only had my sister, and while I was sorry they lost her, I wasn't their daughter anymore. I never had been, because they never treated me like one. Especially in the past few years, I've done everything I could to distance myself from my past and leave them behind. Then they twisted my words, accusing me of thinking I was too good for them just because I had money now. That wasn't what I meant at all. I meant I had left them behind emotionally and no longer had any attachment to them. At that moment, I didn't even feel the need to correct them. I don't usually show off my wealth because I find it tacky, but I've worked hard for everything I have. I've accomplished everything on my own without their help. When they accused me of acting superior because I made money, I simply agreed with them. I told them it was exactly what they thought it was because arguing with them would only waste my energy. They weren't the type of people to understand any perspective other than their own. Besides, I deserved to feel proud of what I'd achieved. After I acknowledged their accusations, they started cussing at me until the cops arrived and escorted them off my property. Finally, after they were gone, I was able to relax. I decided to contact a lawyer to see if I could file a restraining order against them. I'm not sure if I have the grounds since they haven't physically threatened me, but this situation is wearing on me. I don't want to sell my house and move because I love it here. It's the first place I've truly called home, and I'm not willing to sacrifice it just because of them. For now, I'm hoping they realize I don't want them around and stay away. Or, better yet, they'll give me a solid reason to file for that restraining order. After I called the cops to have my parents escorted off my property, they didn't attempt to contact me again. However, my grandparents did get in touch with me. They apologized for everything and said they had always regretted not believing me when I told them I was innocent. I didn't hold anything against them. After all, they helped me when I needed it, and they had reasons to doubt me given the evidence planted in my dorm. I forgave them, but I'm not exactly in touch with them consistently. It was through them that I learned my parents had moved to the suburbs after selling their house because it held too many memories of my sister. I can understand that sentiment, but honestly, I'm just glad they're nowhere near me anymore. As for me, I've moved on with my life. I'm doing well in my career, and even though my ex-roommate and I hit a bump in the road recently, we've patched things up.